Take heed, watch. You do not know when the time will come. It is like a man traveling abroad. He leaves home and places his servants in charge, each with his work, and orders the gatekeeper to watch. Watch therefore. You do not know when the Lord of the house is coming, whether in the evening or at midnight, at the crow or in the morning. May he not come suddenly and find you sleeping. What I say to you, I say to all, watch. Good morning. Welcome to a short biblical reflection on the Gospel according to Mark chapter 13, verses up from 33 up to 37. It is about the necessity of being watchful. The Gospel reading for the first Sunday of Advent year A. This short text we can divide into two small parts. The first part has a more general sense and proverbial character, comparing to a man traveling who distributed his possessions to the servants and then gave them the orders. And then the second one has more application character. Both are introduced with very similar statements. In verse 33, take heed, watch, you do not know when the time will come. And second one, watch therefore, you do not know when the Lord of the house is coming. We have the time that will come and the Lord who is coming. We also notice that there are four instances of the verb in the translation to watch, because in Greek there are two verbs in verse 33, one verb and very similar in other three instances. And those verbs do not appear earlier in chapter 13 because our text concludes chapter 13, why it will be found the second verb now in chapter 14 in a parallel text. The coming of the time or coming of the Lord, those statements are unprecise. Therefore, we should extend and look at the literal context. In fact, in the Gospel according to Mark, from the beginning of chapter 13, we have teaching of Jesus concerning the end of times, but also of what will happen after his death and resurrection. And it begins with this observation that the disciples were admiring the beauty of the temple. One, in fact, said to Jesus, Lord, look, teacher, what stones and what buildings? And Jesus answered him, do you see these great buildings? There will not be one stone left upon another that will not be thrown down. And then we have in verses 3 and 8 description of the signs of the end. Then following verses 9 up to 13 about the coming persecution. Then from verse 14 up to 23, great tribulation. Verse 24 up to 27, coming of the Son of Man. And from verse 28 up to 32, we have the lesson of the fig tree. This immediately preceding text I'm just quoting here. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. When its branch becomes tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that the summer is near. And also, when you see these things taking place, you know that he is near, at the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away before all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But of that day and of that hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. And then we have our texts, which is entitled here, need to be watchful. As a parallel text, I chose the description of the prayer of Jesus in the Gethsemane olive garden, in particular because there is also very interesting repetition of the same expression. But if you would read now in the so-called Byzantine text, because Currently, in so many modern translations in various languages, which are based on the critical editions, we just in verse 33 have a shorter reading. We just, as in this translation, take heed, watch. Why in a Byzantine text and all these Byzantine different manuscripts, as well also in some other languages, including Latin, we have yet the verb to pray. So then we have this expression, watch and pray, which is retaken in the description of prayer of Jesus in the olive garden, when once he finds them, the disciples, sleeping, he tells them in verse 38, watch and pray, for you do not enter into the temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. The biblical scholars, those of textual criticism, try to explain that the reason for why this verb is omitted in critical edition, because it seemed to them an addition by copyists. Strangely, that so many different copies in so many different kinds of texts and manuscripts, somehow spontaneously they would add this verb to pray in order to match this our text with the description of the prayer of Jesus in the olive garden. And additionally, that expression, watch and pray, is found in so many manuscripts, you could say in majority, and in minority is omitted. So therefore, what would be rather much more easier to think that this verb was omitted, because at the level of this small unit 33 and 37, the repetition 4 times of the same verb watch could make them think that this verb to pray was not necessary and they could omit it. And apart that those two texts are also similar, not only by that repetition, because as in our text, Jesus says that you should be watchful in order that the Lord, when comes, they should not find you sleeping. And the sleeping is so much underlined in the prayer of Jesus in the olive garden in that story, because we read it, verse 37, and he came and found them sleeping, and he said to Peter, Simon, are you asleep? And then later on in verse 40 again he found them sleeping, and then in verse 41, yet when he comes he tells them, are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Then another repetition which we have, and with this enigmatic statement in verse 32 in our text, but of that day or that hour no one knows. And now in the description of the prayer of Jesus in the olive garden, we have that Jesus says after, at the end, it is enough, the hour has come. Jesus announces that no one knows when this hour will come, and now Jesus is announcing that this hour has come. Because in fact the text in the 13th chapter of the Gospel according to Mark not only describes what will happen at the end of the world, but also what would happen, and in fact what happened immediately after Jesus' death and resurrection. So we could say also what could happen at any time. There are those two levels, which is very difficult sometimes to distinguish. Therefore, if we would take that notion, possibility of already predicting what would happen immediately in short time, therefore this expression would have a reason that this generation will not pass away before all these things taken place, because the disciples witness to Jesus' suffering, death, and resurrection. I would like to wish you a nice day, a nice reflection on this gospel reading. God bless you.